Welcome to this wonderful book by Peter Bregman called 18 Minutes. Find your focus, master distractions, and get the right things done. Although this book is part time management, but also part kind of self improvement and business philosophy, and all in all, a great book on how to manage your time, how to manage your life, how to manage your days, your moments, and your years, and as the time flies by. Having said that, first let's jump into the big idea of the book. Well, the big concept in the book here is the fundamental idea is first that it's impossible to get it all done. It's really dangerous to even try it. So what Peter talks about is the idea that let's not try to fit in everything. Let's not try to do everything. Let's identify what's most important to us. Let's identify what's really critical for us. And let's only do those things. Because if we try to do everything, we will lose the game of life. And the other thing that Peter talks about, which is wonderful, is not that planning by itself is good, but it is only planning, it's incomplete. So, the hardest part about managing your time is not planning, it is instead in the doing, it's in the execution, it's in the getting started and sticking to that momentum and avoiding that busyness that you get stuck in on a lot of days. So, having said that, let's transition over into the book, into the ideas from the book. And Peter has divided this book into four broad areas, going from a very big time perspective, very large time scale, to a very small time scale, all the way to the moment. And starting from pausing where we are right now to take stock of the current situation, to going all the way into what the focus is for this year, and then thinking about what the focus is for the day, how to plan the day, how to manage your time for a day, and then thinking about the moment, about how you can manage your moments from moment to moment to moment. Having said that, the pause principle, if we start with that, it is rather simple in its ideas, where he says, let us not see the world as we want it to see, uh, as you expect it to be, but as it is. First, you have to be able to understand, pause, and see where you are, to be able to see what's going on, to be able to see it as it is rather than as you expect it to be, so that you can actually now plan or now think about how to tackle it. The other big idea, one of my favorites here in the book, is expanding your view of yourself. So, not limiting yourself to the idea that, let's say you are the CEO, or you're an employee, or you're an engineer, or you're a doctor, or anything like that, but to see yourself in all of your glory in all the different areas of life, to see yourself as a golfer, maybe as a skier, maybe as a guitarist, maybe as a reader, maybe as a dad, maybe as a son, maybe as a mother, as a father. There's so many different possibilities of who you are. So you don't want to be limited in your view of yourself as an engineer or as a doctor or just your professional side. You have to think of yourself as a complete person, because what it gives us when we expand this view of ourselves and allow ourselves to believe that we're much greater and to spend time on all these different areas, they help us get a perspective beyond our scope. And that helps us solve problems when we get stuck. So it is really important to actually expand our view of ourselves. And then the third thing Peter talks about is to stop reacting to the past and start acting towards the future. What he means by that is to stop. So whenever there is an event, and then we react to the event, and then there is an outcome. What Peter is talking about is, instead, let's think of the event, let's think of the outcome that we want, and then act accordingly. So let's act according to the outcome we want rather than let's react and then find the outcome. Having said that, let's now talk about the year. What do we need to do in the year? The the first thing that Peter starts with is the idea that there are four elements that we need to identify, that we need to understand in order to get a better grip of ourselves, which is your strengths, your weaknesses, your differences, and your passions. And when it comes to your strengths, you have to. You can hear it in all different ways from all sorts of people, but everyone, it all comes down to when it comes down to success, it's all about following the things that you are good at, following your strengths, following your passions, following those things that get you the most excited. And don't play other people's game. Play a game that you design and that you can win. So play to your strengths. Then the other thing is identifying your weaknesses and not trying to overcome them, but making them as a part of who you are and living with them and just integrating them to make an impact in the world. And the third element of the what makes you is the differences you have. Rather than trying to fit in with society, rather than trying to be the person who is all things to all people, rather than trying to blend in, it is much, much, much easier to be different and to be who you are and to stand out, because that is when you get noticed. Even though you may polarize a lot of people, you will win. But if you try to fit in and if you try to please everyone, you'll end up pleasing no one. And then the fourth element is your passions. Again, I use the word passion when we were talking about strengths. Of course, passion is a little bit different, but the concepts tie in together very strongly. And when he talks about passion, first thing, there are four things that make the element successful for you, and that is having a desire and understanding our obsessions and understanding ourselves and understanding, okay, where am I obsessing, what are the things that really drive me, what is it that I'm always motivated to do, thinking about those things, because that's a clear indication of where your passions might lie. The other thing about the four elements that make you, and specifically passion, is that persistence has to come into play. When Peter talks about persistence, he's talking about how we want to do what we want and we must persist through it. But the idea is that yes, we can do anything we want as long as we want to achieve it, we believe we can achieve it, and we actually enjoy trying to achieve it. Now that is a critical concept here. Enjoy trying to achieve it, not just wanting it and wanting it hard, but enjoy trying to achieve it, not just achieving but trying part. And he goes back to Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, which is a wonderful book. I highly recommend it, where he talks about 10,000 hours of practice. That's how many hours of practice you need to actually become great at any skill area or craft. And if you enjoy those hours of practice, if you enjoy practice, then you will spend the time. But if you don't enjoy the practice hours, 10,000 hours is a lot of time. If you spend 1 hour every day on that thing, you can spend almost 30 years trying to master it. So unless you really, really, really enjoy it, you will not stick to something for 30 years. And the other thing is, if you want to be great at it, you actually have to enjoy being clumsier. You have to allow yourself to be clumsier. You allow yourself to fail, to learn, to not protect your ego, to just keep going with it. That is persistence. You have to be able to enjoy trying to achieve it. And the other element of passion is ease. It's kind of counter to the previous idea where we talked about persistence and how we must try to achieve it, but it all fits together. And in some ways, our lives are lived in paradoxes. They're not lived in whole black and white events or black and white thoughts. So yes, you have to be persistent and you have to stick to the failures, but at the same time, it feels easy because you enjoy it. And it feels effortless because you enjoy the effort. You enjoy the failure as well because there's learning involved with it. And then the fourth element of passion is meaning. That is understanding what matters to you and then spending time on that what matters to you. What Peter Bregman talks about in his book here is understanding what is working for you, what is awesome for you right now, what matters to you the most on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on the things you do in life. And then also understanding what is neutral in the sense, what are the things that you don't really care about, you just do them because you have to do them for the sake of doing them. And what are the things that really bother you, that you don't like to do them, but unfortunately you are spending time doing them. So first, taking stock of what is it that we're spending our time on, what's awesome, what's neutral, what's alienating us, and then trying to get ourselves to spend time only on what's awesome, what is it that is working for us, that is enjoyable for us. So that's meaning for you. So again, that's the four components of passion. But for the year, one of the things you want to understand is the four elements that make you, that we talked about: your strengths, your weaknesses, your differences, and your passions. And then what do we need to avoid in this year? There are two components that he talks about, which is do not surrender after failure and do not get paralyzed by overwhelm. Just keep going. So, talking about surrender after failure, the path to success in any endeavor in life is just like bodybuilding. Like, if you have done any bodybuilding or weightlifting or anything of that sort, you realize that the only way to build our bodies is to push ourselves to higher and higher weights and to push ourselves to failure with the current weight that we have, so that that is the only time the muscle will grow. If the muscle is not failing with the weight that you have, it's probably not growing. And the other concept that Peter talks about, which is from a wonderful book by Carol Dweck, PhD, it's called Mindset, and where she talks about two different mindsets: the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And the whole idea is that if we adhere to the growth mindset, we believe that our talents are not fixed, our abilities are not fixed, and we can grow and learn and do whatever we want to do and whatever we wish to do. However, with a fixed mindset, we're stuck with what we believe is possible, what we believe are our innate talents and skills, and anything outside of it is beyond our capability. So we actually are scared of failures. We're scared of trying because if things are not within our innate ability, then why do them? So that is the difference between the mindsets, and the key for success in any endeavor is to have the growth mindset to say, okay, let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. And then Peter talks about annual focus, where, going back to the fundamental idea of the book, the secret is not to do too many things. Not to do too many things. If you look at the most successful people in life, you will always find that these are the people who are doing the things that they enjoy the most, and they spend most of their time doing it. If you think of Tiger Woods, he plays golf all the time. If you think of Warren Buffett, he's an investor, and that's what he does all the time. That's what he thinks about. That's what he breathes. If you think about Richard Branson, he's an entrepreneur, and you can see him all the time. These people enjoy what they do, and they spend their time doing it. They spend a lot of time doing those things that are important to them and cutting out everything else. And what Peter talks about is taking it a level deeper and saying, okay, let's identify 5 areas of focus that will comprise your year, and then let's just spend time on those, 95% of our time on those, and 5% on other things. Now that part is really, really, really hard to do, but I think the key is to be able to get yourself as close to it as possible. Now, having talked about first taking a pause, then thinking about our year, and thinking about who we are and how to focus our year, let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about the day. And the key concepts here are: first, you need to plan the day. You need to decide what you're going to do, decide what you're not going to do, and then calendar it in. Like, you have to be very specific when you're going to do it tomorrow, when you're going to do it in the day. And then Peter talks about his 18-minute ritual, which is indeed the book itself. The title of the book, 18 Minutes. So, talking about planning the day ahead, Um, you have to plan your day ahead. No big deal, no big idea here. In other than the fact that planning is the way. If you don't plan the day, we're gonna lose the day. Now, deciding what to do, it should be within the 5 areas of focus that we talked about earlier from the year. And again, if we are not spending in 95% of our time on those 5 areas of focus, we need to find ways. We need to stop doing the things that we need. We need to find things that we need to ignore and make a list of things that are important to do and just again refocus on those. So, one of the key ideas here is to say, okay, in these 5 areas of focus, let us identify all the different things that I could be doing in these 5 areas of focus that we identified in the year. And then deciding what not to do. So deciding what to do and deciding what not to do are just equally important, because if you have a long list of things to do, which includes the things that are in your 5 areas of focus, but also all the other things that you know you need to do to live your life normally, and the errands that you need to run, or the things that you don't necessarily enjoy doing but you're doing because that's the way life has been so far. The the key here is to have an ignore list. Just as importantly, we have to have a to-do list. And in order to get the right things done, choosing what to ignore is just as important as choosing where to focus. Only recently there was a news article by in which Marissa Myers, the CEO of Yahoo, was quoted, and she was saying how we she makes a to-do list every day, and she prioritizes, and she goes over the top things and the bottom things, and she does not worry about the things that are at the bottom that do not get done. She's glad that she gets the most important things in her to-do list done, and she does not worry about the things at the bottom. And that is what we need to cultivate, the habit of ignoring what we need to do, what we don't need to do. The other idea, and this is really important, is when tomorrow, which is being able to calendar it in. So if you really want to get something done, you actually have to decide beforehand where and when you'll get it done. Research has shown this time and again, numerous times, that if you want to get something done, and if you calendar it in, if you put the specific time and place where you'll get it done, you are around 80% likely to get it done. But if you do not put a time on it, your likelihood of doing the task falls to below 30%. There are different researches and different numbers have been quoted, so you should go read the book and find those numbers. But it's a drastic difference between, if you calendar it in, there's a very high likelihood of it getting done. If you don't calendar it in, there's a very high likelihood that the thing will not get it done. And the same goes for rituals. It is important. The power of a ritual is in its predictability. And for us to be able to say when and where we're going to do what are the things that we need to do in our rituals is super important. And then we, of course, move into the 18-minute ritual, which is the title of the book, where Peter talks about how you want to spend those 18 minutes to focus your life. So he talks about 5 minutes in the morning where you identify the key items and you put them in your calendar, and then 5 minutes at nighttime where you look at how did the day go, what were the day's successes and challenges, what were the learnings, what should I improve tomorrow. And then the third thing is, who all do I need to reach out to? Who are the people? Who are the people who I need to thank or give feedback to or ask something from? Those are the 5 minutes at nighttime. And then 1 minute every hour for the 8 hours of work. And what in this 1 minute, what we want to do is take a deep breath at the beginning of every hour and think about the last hour. Did I use my hour properly? And then think about the hour to come. How am I going to use the next hour? Who am I going to meet? Who am I going to be? And what am I going to do? And again, the power of a ritual is in its predictability. If you make this ritual predictable, if you put it in your calendar, then it's highly likely that you'll get it done. So that's the day for you. Planning it ahead, deciding what to do, deciding what not to do, putting it in a calendar, and using the ritual, the 18-minute ritual. And now here comes the fun part. In the moment, this is where the rubber hits the road. So we have taken all these steps that have just so far planned these things out, but now we have to actually do them. So let's talk about in the moment what happens. There are times when we will fail to do that. We decide to do this, we make this grand plans, we put that in the calendar, but then somehow we fail to take action. We fail to get started. And what Peter talks about is there are various techniques that we can use to actually get ourselves to get started, to get going on that particular task. And the first concept, which I really love, is the idea of the fact that we need less motivation than we think. A lot of us think that in order to do certain tasks, we need a lot of motivation. We need all this motivation just to get started, but that's not the truth at all. You actually don't need a lot of motivation. So if you need to go running for an hour, the only motivation you need to do in all likelihood is to put your running shoes on, put your shorts on, and then walk outside the door and go walking for 2 minutes. So a total ritual that will take you 3 to 4 minutes is all the motivation you need. So you do not need the motivation for an hour. You actually only need the motivation for the first 3 or 4 minutes to make those initial steps, and then the motivation will come. The other way to think about it is we want to act in order to motivate ourselves rather than motivate ourselves in order to act. If we act in order to motivate ourselves, which is the right way to do things, then it comes much faster. And it is understandable that the hardest part is that initial moment of discipline. And after that, it's easy. So think about it. It's like jumping in the pool. You in a cold pool on a cold morning, you don't want to jump in. And you try to dilly-dally with it, and you put your foot in it, and you put your leg in it, and then you put your waist in it. Much easier to just jump into it in that little moment. So think about it, really big concept here. You don't need as much motivation as you think. So if you need to do some accounting or some billing or your taxes, don't try to get motivated and do it for the next 3 hours. Just set yourself the first 5 minutes. Say, okay, for the first, I'm just going to do it for 5 minutes, and I'm going to take this action for 5 minutes and see how it takes over. What will eventually happen is in 5 minutes, you'll find the motivation that you need, and you'll continue on. You'll actually start enjoying it, and you'll not give up. The next thing is idea I like to call Nintendo Wii, because that was the way he described it in the book. But what Peter talks about is that instead of rewarding ourselves with money or with things that do not excite us, let's make it fun for ourselves. Let's make it fun to motivate ourselves. And sometimes, when there are challenging problems to be solved and we are not able to find solutions, what we want to do is to make it a fun contest rather than make it a big problem. And what one of his clients did was they were trying to solve a problem for 2 years, and they would put up all this cash bounty and rewards and stuff like $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 for someone who solves the problem, and people would never come forth and solve the problem. But one time the people decided that they're going to make it a little more fun, and they said, okay, whoever solves this problem gets this Nintendo Wii. And this was like publicly displayed in the company, and everyone was made aware of it. And within a week, an engineer solved the problem because it was fun, it was motivating, it was exciting. So that's the concept. If you have any part of life where you're getting challenged and you need some fun, maybe you want to do that to yourself as well. The other idea that it's a very big idea is moving the table. So figuring out that we don't always need the motivation, and that environment can help us a lot in taking action. So making it easy to do the things that we need to do, and making it hard not to do the things that we don't want to do. And the one of the examples Peter talks about in the book is that even a 10-second technology hiccup can dissuade as much as 50% of users from following through on doing what they need to do, like filling out a time card. Just a 10-second technology hiccup was all that was that was preventing them from doing it. So making it easy on ourselves. Maybe in your case, it is as simple as cleaning up your work desk pristine, making it very nice and appealing for yourself so that when you are there, you're going to sit there and you're going to enjoy working and you're not going to get distracted. You're going to make your environment help you take action. And then creating boundaries for yourself. So being able to say no. Being able to say no. It's super important that we're able to say no. Because every time we get interrupted, we almost waste 40% of our time because, or let me put it another way, every time you get interrupted, 40% of the time you will not return to the task where you started. So you're losing a lot of efficiency, you're losing a lot of productivity because of interruptions. So you have to be able to draw boundaries and say no when you are doing what you need to do. And there are two concepts that sound counterintuitive to each other. One is increasing the transition time and one is shortening the transition time. But as we discuss them, you'll find that they make a lot of sense. So increasing the transition time is there are times when you actually have those important things where you need to transition into them, and they can save you tremendously. So increasing your transition time is how can we make the thing that is coming up, the important task that we have coming up, faster, shorter, more productive. And even like 5 to 10 minutes of planning can shave off 30 minutes of the task. So spend those transition times to plot how you're going to maximize the outcome. Put it on the calendar, think about the outcome, do all the things beforehand so that during the task, during that meeting, during that important assignment, you will be much more focused on getting it done. At the same time, the other side of the coin is to shorten your transition time. Sometimes you're just spending too much time spinning in circles trying to do something that for example, you need to jump into a cold pool. You're spending so much time just, dipping your toe, dipping your leg, dipping your waist, instead of just jumping in, shortening the transition time and going for it once and for all. In some ways, it ties to the initial idea of not needing as much time for as much motivation, because you could just get started with the smallest change and then you can keep on going. And then in terms of boundaries, the other one is to say yes appropriately and not to just continuously say yes to everything and everyone that comes your way. The other thing in moments, in managing moments to moment, is managing yourself, which is getting over perfectionism. I think if there is any key to success, one of if there are annals written about keys to success, perfectionism and getting over perfectionism is always there in the list of things that we need to be doing. We should not worry about perfectionism, and what the world does not reward perfectionism, it only rewards productivity. And the key to managing perfectionism and to defeat it is don't try to get it right in one big step. Just get it going. So don't try to write a book, just write a page. Don't try to do the whole project, just let's do the first 10 minutes of the project. The small steps give you the opportunity to succeed, and that builds your confidence. So don't try to get it right in one big step. That is one big message. And then good enough is good enough, in the sense that you don't have to get it right. That's not the key to perfection. The key to perfection is get started, to get it doing and get it going, and to do it often. And if you do it often enough, you will get it right. So instead of trying to get it right in order to be perfect, in order to be really good, let's just do in order to get close to perfection. Let's just keep on doing. That's the way to manage perfectionism, to don't try to get it right. And then again, understanding that good enough is good enough. The key to perfectionism is not to try to be perfect, but to keep on doing in order to get closer to being perfect. The other thing that we all defeat ourselves a lot of times is multitasking. Now, the key is not to multitask because it's inefficient, it's unproductive, it's stressful, and the quality of your output is low. It is by far one of the most unproductive things we can do to ourselves. One of the most stressful things we can do to ourselves is multitasking. There are several experiments that have been conducted that show that when people multitask, their stress levels go up, the quality of their work goes down, and the time they take to get things done goes down. A lot of you might think, oh no, I'm okay, I can multitask. It's not true. The human brain is a single tasking machine. Now, single tasking. Now, how do you do single tasking? How to use it? First, when you focus on something, you want to turn off all your distractions. And the other thing is to give yourself very tight timelines to complete certain tasks. So instead of trying to give yourself all the time in the world, you give yourself 30 minutes for a task that would take you an hour, and then you focus all your energy on finishing it in 30 minutes. Because what happens is when you give yourself shorter timelines, you do not have time for other things. You do not have time to go check the browser. You do not have time to answer the phone call or answer that email. You only have time to do this thing. So cutting down your time will actually help you get single tasking done very efficiently. So cutting down the time will allow us to focus singularly on this task, because when you will have half the time of what you normally would have to complete a task, you're not going to spend the time dilly-dallying or thinking about your email or spending time answering their phone call or looking at the text message or doing your Facebook update. You're just going to go focus on it because you have much less time now. And the other thing, again, going over the whole perfectionism syndrome, is actually to say, okay, I'm just going to shoot for imperfect. I'm not going to go for perfect. I'm going to shoot for imperfect, and let's just go for imperfection because that's going to be enough for me. Now, having gone through all of this, having gone through the whole exercise, the whole book, the key, one of the important things for us to understand is that we can do all the planning, we can do all the thinking, but getting started and getting the rubber on the road is the hardest part. It can feel like it's a very daunting task. It will take a lot of thought and effort and energy, but all we need to do is to have the moment, get started. And once you get started, you will have all the momentum. And once you have momentum, it is hard to stop. So get started. Don't try to do the whole thing. Just get started. Don't try to do the whole thing. Just get started. Well, that was 18 minutes. Find your focus, master distraction, and get the right things done.